This video is going to explain the exact things that you will need to do for when you're writing proofs, depending on what your proof says. If your proof, so this is a bit extra, if your proof says, if it says triangle congruent to triangle, so that means that it will be triangle ABC is congruent to triangle XYZ. It would actually say that triangles are congruent to triangles. What that means is that this will be your last statement. That will be your last statement. Whatever your proof is your last statement. So this means that you'll just do a normal proof. You'll do a normal proof. You'll stop at triangles congruent. Stop at triangle congruent to triangle. That means you'll stop your last reason. Your last reason here will be side, 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 angle, 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 side, or HL. Means you would stop. If your proof says angle congruent to angle or segment congruent to segment, so that's a segment symbol, you will actually go one step further. You'll go from a normal proof, you still have to do your normal proof, but then you'll have to go one extra step. So this will be your last statement, and your last reason will be CPCTC. No matter what, this is always your first step. So you look to see if you have triangles congruent, you stop there. If you have angle congruent to angle or segment congruent to angle, segment congruent to segment, you have to do both of these steps. It just flows. It goes down. You'll also could have one more step. You could have two extra steps. If your proof has some type of word in it, like bisects, midpoint, parallel. So if it has some type of word, if it says to prove the word, so prove that segment AB bisects angle ZBY. If it says to prove some type of word, it means you have to go through all of these steps, but your last reason, so you'll go from here, you'll do two extra steps. It'll actually be the definition of, your last reason should be the definition of, then whatever that word was. Now, generally, it'll be whatever that word is, like bisect, angle bisect, segment bisect, midpoint, with the definition of whatever the word is from here. However, the time that it does not happen like that is if the word is parallel. If that word is parallel, you don't use definition of parallel. You actually use the alternate interior angles. So if it's parallel, you say alternate interior angles, and it's technically the converse of it. Or, it depends on the shape. If it was the Z, it's alternate interior angles. But if the picture was in the shape of an F, you would actually say corresponding angles. And technically, again, it's also the converse. So this is if that word was parallel. You don't say definition of parallel. You would say alternate interior angles converse, or you would say the corresponding angles converse, depending on the picture itself. Like this picture could have been the alternate interior angles because it's the shape of a Z. The hard part is knowing this part right here, the proof, because you don't actually say the word. You would say that something bisects whatever it is. You would actually say what the proof says. That would be your last statement. But the hard part is knowing what to put here. If your proof says this part, you actually have to do this like normal. But since there are three things you could say are congruent because of the corresponding parts of congruent triangles, because there are three things, you have to determine which one of those three things you need for here. If it tells you, like we have up here, what that thing is, you're fine. But if you have to prove bisect or midpoint or parallel lines, then you have to figure out which one of the 3 additional parts would need to be here. So if it says bisect, then you figure out what part is being bisected. And you put those 2 parts have to be congruent. If it says parallel, you find and it was alternate interior angles, you find the 2 alternate interior angles and say that those are congruent by CPCTC. So if your third part, if it's asking you to explain the word, to prove the word, you actually have to pretend. It's basically just pretending that it already is there, and that's the part that you prove.